There are 3 daily habits that are destroying your memories, and you will lose 10% of your brain by the age of 55 and 20% of your brain by the age of 75. It'll actually shrink if you do not do something about this. There is a free workshop that you can partake in where you'll learn what these 3 habits are, how to fix it, and how to regain your memories. There's a link below in the description on how to sign up. Be sure to sign up. It's free information.
Well, they're so secretive because they're not proud of who they are, and they're heels, and they're cowards, and they're criminals. So the people doing it, I don't think they're women, and I love men. This is not a bashing thing. I think it's men. And I know that the position that I'm in is a company that's all men. And they only put men out. And my movies, had they featured them at Gaia TV, where they're holding my first 4 films for 10 years under an exclusive rights distribution deal, it turned out to be a suppression deal. But 6-7 years ago, when I started this horrific thing with them, had they chosen to treat me like David or Corey or Linda, they could have made a fortune on my films. So there's something happening there where they definitely are set on not permissioning my films to get out to the public. They even took them out of their catalog, took them off their TV series. So it's very clearly intentional. I don't think it's just because I'm a woman. And it may be, here's my guess, is it because they remote viewed that I would make Crop Circle Diaries? They paid someone to remote.
It's really interesting. And I got to say, I love men too. I love my son. I love my husband. And I surely know a lot of, well, I don't know if I know personally because I don't like to be around them, but there's a lot of psychopathic women. And I've known a lot of women that I really don't like because they have something evil going on. And we all know that Hillary Clinton was not a good character. So all the men out there listening, you've watched enough of my stuff that you know that I'm not anti-men either. And so I don't know what's going on there. But for some reason, there probably is a group of men in the CIA or in that want that power. And maybe that power need is more concentrated in men, but I don't know. That being said, it still is disturbing that they would do this because there's some other agenda that I can't figure out because it's all over the place and it's so public. So the only weapon they have is to make people look like idiots. And it's the only weapon because it's so public. And, looking at the information that you're sharing, Monique, and that you're showing, Patty, is that, wait a minute, these are not idiots. This is so, anybody with any kind of intellectual honesty will go, you can't create this in 20 minutes with a bunch of boards or even overnight with a bunch of boards because they have those swirl patterns. They got all these things that is impossible to make with boards. Plus, it takes really smart people to do it. Why would they, really smart people all over the world, dedicate themselves to doing this on a continual basis without others figuring it out? I mean, that just doesn't make sense. And the reason why I say it takes really smart people is a lot of these crop circles are pretty complex. They're continuous, they're complex, they're perfect, and it would take some pretty smart people to do this. So it's like, why is this going on?
Exactly. A farmer said to me, you have to, like you said, smart, you have to be really smart to do it. And if you're that smart, why should you do it? And I thought, that's quite a statement.
Right? I mean, why would you be messing around with crop circles to that degree?
Yeah.
I think the farmers have been threatened by whoever this mob is. I think a lot of the farmers acquiesced to stop allowing people easily to be on their property. Do you remember, Monique, when we were dancing in the fields? It was so easy to get in and out. Yep. You could do 3-4 in a day. You had to hike into them, and they weren't easy to find sometimes, but it was totally free. Now she's getting hassled. When I left at the end of 9 weeks of filming, I was scared to death on my way to the airport. A man said, I'm going to get my brother to stick something on you and get you busted so you'll never go back to America. I was so scared when he said that. Not that I have anything on me, but he was going to have his brother plant something. That's a scary threat. So I took all my footage and I mailed it to 2 different friends in 2 different packages in case I didn't make it back. I was scared, and I didn't go back the following year. But then I came back in 2010 with a vengeance, and that's when Monique and I did a lot of playing. I think the reason my films are being hidden is movie 1 and movie 4 showed that the Oliver's Castle was absolutely real beyond a shadow of a doubt, in my opinion. What I found by, I don't even want to say it wasn't math, it wasn't wisdom, it was listening to a voice, very much like William Levengood listened to when he proved that crop circles were real, and the only science lab in the world that did. And they hid his work like crazy. My 8th movie features William Levengood's real work. And the punchline is that the crop circle seeds are growing 30 to 400% more food and biofuel per plant, with up to 75 more percent more nutrition per seed. And the plants continue to grow when it's too hot, too cold, too wet, and too dry. And they absolutely proved that this was real in the lab by measuring the magnetics of not a few, but thousands of samples over years. And he was a science wizard since the 1950s. So he did 30 years of plants and soil, everything you could imagine. And as soon as he was brought the first crop circle nodes, he went, "What is this?" And he kept trying to reproduce it. And when they finally figured out what was creating crop circles and who those balls of light are in the Oliver's Castle footage, and I have one in France also, of balls of light creating a crop circle in seconds, in my 8th film, Crop Circle Diaries, what we found is that crop circles are not military planes with lasers, and some stupid ones are boards and ropes and Team Satan or whatever, but the real crop circles. And many of them are real, even if they're made by humans, which is mind-boggling. I didn't know it until movie 8. But Lefty and his real partner, who was not Nancy Talbot this century, it was always Penny Kelly, they proved that crop circles are coming out of the earth in spinning vortices of plasma, coming up in pairs of 2 on a sacred site or on a ley line between 2 sacred sites, high energy over water. And now we've got these 2 balls of spinning plasma that came out of the earth. They're not balls, they're V's. A vortex is a V. And so they spin, but they've already been predetermined what the message is going to be and what frequencies are going to be in that vortex. So we've got these spinning vortices of all these different frequencies, some earth, some water. Occasionally, like Monique mentioned, when people are thinking and praying and asking the earth for a confirmation of something, and it shows up in a crop circle, that's the human layer of the spinning vortex, because the earth is listening, she is alive. And all this misinformation is to ignore the fact that we're living on a living planet. And when we choose to start working with the earth and listening and working with the water, we can co-create crop circles. We can also allow ourselves to be conscious enough to read them like a book, because yes, they are giving us messages. Many of them, when they just give up on us, they throw it down in a binary code so that we will read it. A computer can read it. And then humans will say, "I made that, you're just foolish." No, it's a real message. So the binary code that I found between the 2 balls of light, I ended movie 1 and I began movie 4. And when I showed that photo of what I found to Penny Kelly, the real partner of William Levengood, she looked right at it and she said, "Wow, what a great moment. It's 2 plasma balls communicating in a binary code." Bam, like that, because she's conscious enough to realize what she was looking at. When I found it, I was green as your backdrop. And so I had no idea, but I said aloud, "Oh my God, those balls communicated. It's real." And so all these years, my first 4 films were locked away, like I said, for 10 years. I think the fact that I found the communication between the balls of light must have upset the people at Gaiam, or I don't know. I'm not going to guess anything else because that was what was important about those first 4 films. So Crop Circle Diaries, I just tied everything in a bow. But then I meet Penny Kelly the year after William Levengood died. And when she told me what they discovered in the lab, then she took me across the state to the lab twice. There's no doubt in my mind what I saw was that William Levengood had re-engineered crop circle science. These spinning plasma vortices that spin and spin with all these different frequencies, he re-engineered into a machine, and he was able to recreate the seeds to produce 30 to 400% more food and biofuel. Who would that be a threat to? That's who's messing with us.
I would think there's that.
Imagine.
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 A place you can go.
That's safe.
With unlimited access
to authentic information.
Backed by solid science.
And the boldest,
brightest
minds.
Where you can learn at your own pace.
Wherever.
Whenever you want.
Without fear of judgment.
Or stigma.
And connect with a community of
like-minded enthusiasts.
As curious
and committed as you are.
To unlocking the power
of cannabis.
Welcome.
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 To Greenflower.
Now, I got to ask you said, you had a quick statement here. You said some of the man-made ones are real, which throws me off quite a bit. Okay, are those man-made ones, do they have the other aspects? Like, are the nodes not broken? Do the seeds, all the different aspects that the plasma things create?
No.
Why do you think they're real? What is it that you think they're real? Is it more just the message that is going down in the circle that makes you feel that they're real? Or is it, because it's not real, but real in some aspect. Is that what you're saying?
It happened physically in front of my eyes, and I was astounded. It was my last time I went to England to film. I had trusted a Canadian film producer, and I ended up hiding the film forever. But we had 11 cases of gear and a drone, and we went out to see this stunning crop circle in 2014 up in Dorset. And it was an image that was outrageous. It looked kind of like a hot air balloon with two, those things you walk through, like around. Anyway, it was a very complicated crop circle. And it was the day I was interviewing Sasha Stone. And I was really excited. He was driving down 3 hours to, meet us in Wiltshire. And then we drove 3 hours back up to Dorset to this only crop circle that was amazing. And I was so excited, it showed up that day, and because there wasn't much in 2014 early season. So all of us are walking, setting up the gear. I had one cameraman and me and Sasha. So as we're walking in, I look at my arm and I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, I feel nothing. I have no hair standing up. I have no tingles. And I realize, crap. I've got a drone flying over. I've got Sasha next to me. We're about to go on camera talking, and I'm going to have to admit I feel nothing. And I'm looking down also, the nodes are broken. It was human made. So we get to the back, and Sasha and I are kind of whispering, and he goes, I think this is human. And I said, for your first crop circle you've ever been in, I think you're reading it right, unfortunately. So we get to the back of the formation. There's 5 women sitting there, and we asked if they would mind if we did some filming, and they didn't have to leave, but we hoped we wouldn't be in their space. And they said, no, feel free. Hey, Sasha, because everybody knew him in England. And even though he'd never been in a crop circle. So he introduces me to the women, and they happen to be from the quantum energy generator team, the free energy device. And so Sasha and I go on camera, and I said, well, the 2 elements are happening where I can see a monolith on the hill and a sacred site over there. So we're probably standing on a ley line right here. And I know we're over an aquifer of water because southern England's the largest salt aquifer in the world. So it could be a real crop circle. But I'm sorry to say I'm not feeling any energy. And the nodes are broken, not bent. And Sasha goes on and he says the same thing. And he said, yeah, well, I expected to feel more. And so that was our thing. And I shut the cameras down and I looked at the women and I said, do you have anything to say? And the woman in the middle has her arms crossed and she says, yeah, I do. So I said, do you mind if we put you on camera? We turned the camera on her and she introduces them from the QEG team. And she said, yesterday we were sitting in the Avebury Stone Circle, not far away, 3 hours though, asking for a confirmation that our free energy device was real. And here's a photo of our free energy device. And she shows us a photo of the machine. And I'm like, why does that look familiar? And then her daughter next to her held up a photo of the crop circle we were in from the air that we had seen before. I went, oh my God, it's a schematic of your crop circle. It was proof positive in that moment that even though the nodes were broken and not bent, it was still a real crop circle because humans had asked for a confirmation. And
so you think it's just humans telepathically communicating with each other somehow, and then that went into making the human crop circle?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Let's go back.
Yeah.
Go back to the plasma. It's a plasma field. We're all sitting in multitudes of plasma fields. We're all made of plasma. Everything is plasma. But as we send out thoughts, if we're doing it in a conscious high frequency of energy, in a group of people sitting in a sacred site saying, asking the circle makers directly, not realizing they're talking to the earth. They're probably looking up because that's what we were told to do. It is the earth. She is alive. She is conscious. She is listening. And she is just me saying this because it's my interpretation. But after spending 3 weeks with Penny Kelly at her farm, listening day after day after day to the fact of the consciousness piece as well as the science piece of William Levengood, it makes total sense. And then meeting the QEG team sitting in a human-made crop circle that didn't have those beautiful nodes like I just showed. And then learning that they had been, not just the 5 of them, but they had the men, the technical team that was working in the lab so they could come and go to this beautiful new crop circle. Boom, it was theirs. I think it was real.
Why do you think that they make it so, if the earth is doing it, why wouldn't it be the message be a little less cryptic? Why does it have to be so hard for us to understand? You know, why can't it just be direct?
I think the messages are very direct. The trick is we have to be looking and listening. I mean, when Monique and I look at a series of crop circles, she can read them like a book, I imagine. I do. But when we look at years of images, for instance, when they're in a binary code, a computer can read it. That's not a question. That's an answer. When we look at 2009, the entire summer was birds, fish, bugs. You can recognize a scarab. You can recognize a hummingbird. You can recognize an octopus. But you're looking at an octopus 1,500 feet long in waving wheat. What's amazing is these are acres of a hummingbird and acres of very blatant images. What happened at the end of that summer? The following, the following spring, the BP oil spill killed millions of birds, fish, insects. In my opinion, that was like clear as day because I was watching and listening. Now, if I was told for years everything's fake, people are silly, then I wouldn't be looking or listening. And they've gotten away with it long enough. But the fact that they have hidden my films and done all this hacking, and then I started getting hit on stage when I was a speaker, the only crop circle speaker in America for years. Last year, Monique's Crop Circle Center, the thrashing they did on TripAdvisor a week before she opened, they had one person probably sitting in a basement, but all these different names flooding TripAdvisor with "Don't go to the barge. The food is terrible. The people are terrible. Don't go to the barge." A week before she opened. This year, and her thing was still beautiful. This year, they just stole everything because they don't want the good information getting out. But I want Monique to clarify, please. You said when Sarah asked you, how much do you think it'll cost to replace what you lost? You said 5 or 600. Did you mean 100 pounds?
No, sorry. In excess of 5,000 to 6,000 pounds.
Okay, yeah, because you said it sounded like 5 to 600, so it's 5 to 6,000 pounds.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and they did it right at the beginning of the season so that it would mess you up for the whole season, supposedly. But you got, you think if we get some donations and things, you're going to get this under control quickly.
Yes. I have 3 weeks to go. And I need, to redesign, to rebuild the exhibition, to get the vital electronics. I have to buy them back. And I have 3 weeks to go because I will go to Wiltshire mid-June to build up the exhibition again. And I work with a printer here in the Netherlands, so I have to do it very quickly.
You fly over the fields every day, right, to get information on where they're at. Now, do you personally do that flying?
Oh, I wish I could. But, I'm so focused on the ground that I fly with the door open so I can lean out and look. And I try to take lessons. But if you really want to be a pilot, you're focused on other things. So I decided to go ahead.
You're personally in the planes, though? You have a pilot that flies you, and that's what I meant. Yes. But yeah, well, I'm glad you answered another question for us. But so you personally go up into those planes. Now, do you have to pay for that, or do you get donations on?
No. There was a moment in my life that I thought I was rich because I sold my company, but the people didn't pay. But in that period, I flew every day. And now I'm trying to get donations from people to keep me flying because it's a crucial part also because if you spot a new crop circle, you need to be the first in it to really make a proper judgment. So I spot one, I phone from the microlight, the plane, I talk with the farmer, I talk with fellow researchers, and then we meet each other at that spot to do some research. But it's always a challenge. You never know. If there's one pattern in those 10 years, always expect the unexpected. You never know what's going to happen.
Well, you said that there was some computer code, some binary stuff was that a whole summer or was it just random ones where they did?
Random. Sometimes it happens. I think on the top of my head, we had about 6 binary codes now. Patty, I think.
What are those binary codes saying?
I think you're better at answering that question.
The most remarkable one that I think people will remember is at the turn of this century, right before 9/11. So keep that in mind. Right before 9/11, the summer before, we had the alien face, very easy to recognize, and a huge round disc next to it. You guys both remember the alien face and the disc crop circle. So the disc looked like one of those player piano discs because it had all these little dots and dashes all around it, which is a code, but it was a binary code. And so they had this man named Paul Vigay who deciphered a very specific message. They also backed it up with computers deciphering the message. And they agreed that this was the message. Keep in mind, after 9/11 and just after the turn of this century, the message was, beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. Believe there is good out there. We oppose deception. Conduit closing.
That's amazing.
Yes, it is. Yes. But there are also crop circles that you can see there might be a binary code, but it hasn't been investigated well. Do you remember, Patty, those 2 faces opposite the road, which made one face together? Discovered by my daughter, by the way. And that is mind-blowing if you look into that. We are looking at 2 circles of many dots and many lines, and if you put the diagrams on top of each other, they produce a face. It's, if you think of that, it's the diameters are like 200 meters, and it's perfect. It's just perfect.
A lot of people thought that was the Shroud of Turin
Yes.
When the faces were put together, it looks like the Shroud of Turin.
Yes.
No, what other digital codes did they find, and what did they say?
Well,
before you go on, why I really like the digital codes is because it's a little more clear. You know, it's not up for interpretation as much, and so it's really fun to hear the direct, where they just go flat out for the digital code. So what other ones?
Well, I hope I can explain it well. Otherwise, you really have to help me. There was this huge event that at Chilbolton that there appeared the first rectangle crop circle ever. And the researchers didn't know what to think of it at that time. But then, looking at the images, they recognized a face. This face resembled the Mars, the face of Mars, if you have ever heard of it. Then 6 days later, and imagine this was in front of a radio telescope, so there were people. Then they see another rectangle thing in the field. And first they think, this looks like a message sent out in space in 1974 by Carl Sagan, because he was sending out things in space about old codes about our planet Earth. You really have to see the images because it's so difficult to explain. But then Paul Vigay found out this was not a replica of this message, but it was an answer to the message. You could make an entire exhibition on this event because there was some crucial things, like we were giving information about how many people there were on Earth and how they looked like. And then they described how they looked on their stellar system, so to say. And they depicted like, more or less an alien with those eyes. There was an extra DNA string added. But what was so mind-blowing was that Carl Sagan had said our transmission medium is a telescope. And what was found in the reply was a crop circle was their medium.
How interesting is that? Well,
yeah.
We'll put, if you can send me the pictures, I'll put those up at the same time as you're talking about it so that people will be able to see it. But that is absolutely phenomenal. Would you two be willing to stay after and answer a question from my Patrons?
It's called the Arecibo message.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
This was the Arecibo message. And as you talked about that, it's very important to explain to people that was a year apart from the alien face in the disc.
Yeah.
They were both only 8 miles from each other in Chilbolton. And coincidentally not, they were both in a field with a huge telecommunication tower. So that why would the Earth herself and all of them put it in a field with a huge tower where they could have perhaps shared the information with the world? They thought that we were more evolved and we might actually use it. Very amazing ones. But the Arecibo message and this whole story you said you could do a whole exhibition on is also in my first movie, Wake Up Call. Anybody listening? ? And my fourth movie, both of them hidden. I forgot I did the whole Arecibo story. So it was Carl Sagan and Frank Drake. And they were sending out this very specific message from Puerto Rico. And it was from the Arecibo Tower. And so they had all this information, like Monique said, about humanity, about our solar system, about what planets were near us, our DNA, what we look like. And they sent it back with 9 very distinct changes. And all of those are described very carefully in my film. But a year apart from the alien face in the disc, beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. My favorite part is believe there is good out there.
Me too.
That's where I want to leave the conversation because I believe the crop circles believe there is good out there. Please get people to start looking and listening and carrying again, because crop circles are an effortless way to communicate and her. And I think that we can do this. And we can bring Monique Center back, and we can get my movies out to the world. And she and I have the same damn attitude, which is she says, I'm going to do it better. Well, wait till you see the new Crop Circle Diaries coming down the road because they hacked my master. New Crop Circle Diaries, you can't hold me back or her. So please support the Research Center coming back. Thank you.
Do you have anything do you want to say before we close this out? Share your website, share how they can get information from your center, all those things.
I would be very grateful if people would help me to rebuild this exhibition. And I have this website, cropcircleaccess.com, and there is a donation button which you can click on and donate whatever you would like to donate. Really very helpful and really very much appreciated if you could help to get the center back on track again and the exhibition. So,
How about you, Patty? Will you guys stick after and do a question for my patrons?
Of course.
Okay.
Well, only for people that want the real science and to know about the plasma vortices and the real crop circles and see hundreds and hundreds of photos of my favorites, go to cropcirclefilms.com, cropcirclefilms.com, and you can rent them for $5. You can buy them and I'll ship them all over the world, or you can buy the entire collection and all the soundtracks in one box called Crop Circle Ecstasy for half the price. But everything's available even after all the hacking. You can always find me on my website or on Amazon in America.
Thank you so much. And you guys are wonderful. And thank you for everything that you're doing for, getting this information out to people.
Thank you. Keep on the good work, Sarah.
Thank you, everyone. And keep your eyes to the skies and start looking at crop circles more.
Yeah, exactly.